Welcome back, everyone, to the tentacles of Cuyahoga County. I am your host, the infamous ex-chief, and this is the week of Monday, September 23rd, episode 2727. And I just realized, for some reason, I have my mic all the way back there. I have to, rearrange my mouse pad with the mic. I almost lost my mic. We're in episode 27 anyways, and if you're new here, I am the ambassador of good law enforcement, not bad cops. I think that's what I'm going to shorten it to. Ambassador of good law enforcement, not bad cops. So, this week is the week of my birthday. We've been talking about it for several episodes. I was actually over one of my former appointments was for the Put-in-Bay Police Department, and we actually had our reunion last weekend. And for those of you who are not familiar with Put-in-Bay, or you are living under a rock, because the only reason you wouldn't know about Put-in-Bay if you lived in Ohio is if you lived under a rock. Maybe if you don't live in Ohio, I can understand where you wouldn't know where Put-in-Bay was, but Put-in-Bay is actually technically South Bass Island. There are actually about 11 islands, I believe, in Lake Erie. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I actually think there's more than that. But I'm going to name off. I'm going to name off what I have here readily off the internet, okay? If you're not familiar with Put-in-Bay, Put-in-Bay Township is actually the largest township in Ohio, although the majority of it is Lake Erie water. But in Put-in-Bay Township, pretty much every major island that anybody has ever heard of in Lake Erie is in Put-in-Bay Township, with one exception, and that's Kelly's Island. Kelly's Island is not in Put-in-Bay Township. But in Put-in-Bay Township, you have South Bass Island, which is actually where the village of Put-in-Bay is derived from. You have Middle Bass Island, which some may have heard about Lanza's Winery, the collapse of Lanza's Winery. That is actually just north of South Bass or Put-in-Bay. Then you have North Bass Island, which is also known as St. George Isle. So then there's also some smaller ones. Rattlesnake Island. It's a private island. It's been private, I think, forever that I know of. And there's some notable people from Northeast Ohio that have summer vacation homes there. I can tell you, as a police officer, because when you were a police officer in Put-in-Bay Township back when I was, and I think our reunion was from police officers from 1997 till 2003. So when I was a police officer back then, I believe I'd only been in Rattlesnake maybe once. So you would actually, we had a harbor patrol boat. So you had officers actually on Middle Bass. I believe there were 2 officers that were stationed on Middle Bass. The majority of the officers were on South Bass, which was Put-in-Bay, and I believe that there were about maybe 40 of us, I think, somewhere in there. Then you had Harbor Patrol. You had 2 Harbor Patrol officers. We had the badass Harbor Patrol boat, and I hope somebody from Put-in-Bay Days is watching, because I don't know a lot about boats. It had these 2 huge engines. All I know is when they would put the throttle forward, your neck would just boom, snap back. But anyways, so if there were calls for service on certain islands, Harbor Patrol would either respond, or if they needed additional officers, Harbor Patrol would have to come into Put-in-Bay, grab some officers, and then go off to the call. Other than that, if Harbor Patrol needed assistance, it was the U.S. Coast Guard or ODNR, and ODNR is up there, but because they have 2 state parks. One of them is actually a large park. But most of the time, watercraft-wise, it was patrolled by the U.S. Coast Guard. But anyway, so you had Rattlesnake Small Island, private island. You had Green Island. You had Gibraltar Island, which Gibraltar Island is home of Ohio State University. They actually have a campus on Put-in-Bay. It's a biology campus, and most of their buildings are on Gibraltar Island, which, again, is slightly northwest. It's actually almost in the same bay area as the docks are on Put-in-Bay, the north side. You have Buckeye Island, you have Mouse Island, which I think Mouse Island was a private island that was owned by... So yes, 1874, Rutherford B. Hayes purchased Mouse Island, along with Ralph Buckland, a Fremont attorney, and Dr. L.Q. Rawson. In 1879, Hayes purchased Rawson's portion of the island. Apparently, the Hayes Island, or the Hayes family owned the island until for over 90 years, until about 1966. And then the Hayes family moved completely from Ohio, and they barely ever came up, and everything was actually falling down on the island. There wasn't much there, but I mean, there was a couple cottages and stuff. It was falling down, and they sold the island to a Marianne Mercer of Rocky River. Did not know that. And I'm assuming they still own it to this day. But it's a private island. I don't think they have anything on it. But anyways, I'm really getting off in the weeds here. We had our reunion, and it's always good to see the officers up there. We actually even ran into a couple of the notable business owners that were always very hospitable to us. I don't think there was honestly a business owner that was not hospitable to the police department up there. And it was just a partnership. It wasn't them trying to don't get in the boot licking comments for me. Okay. It was just a partnership where the business owners just honestly loved the police department. We attempted to help them as much as possible, and helping them was honestly also knowing when not to enforce the law. It's an island. It's a party island. If you're not familiar with it, some will argue that a lot of Key West's traditions, as far as the beads go, actually originated on Put-in-Bay. But Put-in-Bay is very much like the Key West. If you're not familiar with Put-in-Bay and you are familiar with Key West, it's very familiar with the Keys, I would say. There was a lot of things that happened at Put-in-Bay back then. It's actually very right. I'm trying to think. I won't mention who it is, but there was a deputy chief that hired several of us back recently, a couple of years ago. I don't know, 3-4 years ago. It was very sedentary. It was very sedentary compared to the Put-in-Bay that I was used to in 1997. It's actually a lot calmer. There was mass chaos. I remember 4th of July, I think we would get close to 40,000 people. 40,000. Imagine an island. So the entire South Bass Island, again, Put-in-Bay, is 1,588 acres. It's 3.7 miles in length and 1.5 miles long. Wide. 3.7 miles in length, side to side, and 1.5 miles wide, north to south. And you would have, so imagine that. Imagine having about, and somebody please correct me, I don't know. It was somewhere, honestly, I think from 30 to 40,000 people on Christmas and July, we would used to get back in 99-ish. And you have 40,000 drunk people on an island. And services are extremely hard. There's really no hospital on the island. There's an EMS station. They can do some minor stuff. But if you got like seriously injured, which we dealt with a lot of injuries back in the day, you would have to be life flighted off the island, which was logistically it was very unique being on an island, having to transport everybody essentially to the hospital or to the airport. There is a small airport at Put-in-Bay. You would have to transport everybody to the airport, and then life flight would have to land at the airport and take the person off to Port Clinton. I think it was Magruder. Was there another hospital? I don't know. I can't remember. It's been too long. There may have been another hospital also that I'm forgetting. But we had our yearly reunion not as many people were able to attend. We had a last-minute change of dates. This sort of affected a lot of people coming. But we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of us representing those years from 1997 till 2003. Good times. So let's do the housekeeping here, okay? If you have anything that you want to tell me, talk to me about, you guys can, you're more than welcome to use the comments. And I'm not saying I don't mind the emails. I don't mind the messages. I just think that when you leave a comment, folks, I think it helps the algorithm of the channel. And I have everybody that's messaging me privately. And again, if that's the only way that you'll message me, then fine. But I think other people would like to see your comments. And I think it helps the algorithm of the channel when people comment. But anyways, you're more than welcome to leave a comment. You're more than welcome to email me the old school way here, the tentacles of Cuyahoga County at gmail.com, or I don't want to cover the flag, or hit this QR code right here. That is my Signal app. And if you aren't aware, Signal is encrypted, self-encrypted, from device to device, and I have mine automatically by default set to 30-second destruction. So feel free to shoot me a Signal message if you don't want to use the email or you don't want to comment. You can feel free to hit the super thanks button below. Helps the channel, helps me out. You can send me a cup of coffee. I'm actually drinking tea right now. But you can send me a cup of coffee. Helps the channel out, helps me out. And if you don't, that's fine also. But the one thing that you must do, you must watch the ads. You must watch the ads on the channel because that is how the channel continues to grow and continues to operate. Now, this weekend, or this week's episode, it's slightly in the air. I'm going to be honest here. A lot of things going on. Again, it's my birthday, September 26th. I have a lot of public records requests out. I had someone ask me just this weekend, a listener. I had someone literally just this weekend ask me to look at a case called Daniel Holtzclaw. Daniel Holtzclaw, who apparently was an officer that got convicted of some sex acts, but there is apparently a lot of intuition that he may have not done this. So anyways, I did a lot of public records requests. I think there's actually a lot on the internet relative to the case, but I said when I do these, I would like to do them subjectively, and as subjectivity requires that I actually have, some of the original documents. So I sent away for the public records request of that this weekend. Again, we have the other case that I'm still waiting for BCI. I did get acknowledgement from Bureau of Criminal Identification and Investigation, Ohio Attorney General's BCI, relative to the other cold case. They finally did confirm that they are sending me the records, waiting on those. There was a slight update. I read to you a motion filed by Ian McInnes's attorney. The state responded. And quite ironically, they used me in their reply as if they had a conversation with me, which never happened, and they claimed to know apparently what my thought process was. I thought that was very interesting. State never contacted me relative to anything relative to Ian McInnes's case other than the records that they were requesting, but they didn't ask any of my opinion in regards to anything. And they certainly didn't ask about Garrity, which they still don't seem to really have a great grasp on. And it's only this unit of the prosecutor's office, because the other prosecutors are firmly aware of what Garrity is. But it's this division of prosecutors that are prosecuting these Cleveland cases that seem to have no comprehension of what Garrity is. Garrity is an administrative function. Folks, there doesn't have to be, they keep referencing all the threat of termination. I mean, that may be when you order someone to give you a statement, guarantee is always implied. It doesn't even have to be read to you. And I'm going to go over the motion, but why else would I have an officer write out a Form M or a memorandum, a memorandum asking what happened if I wasn't committing an administrative investigation? Why would any administrator, a police chief, a commander, and a sergeant, who they claim to have knowledge of what our thought process was, why would any of us ask an officer to put down on paper what happened if it wasn't an administrative function? I just don't. These guys are just. My hate and disdain towards the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office, I just can't even express it enough. And I don't know if they're truly that ignorant or they're just that corrupt. I don't know. And if they're doing it to East Cleveland officers, you know they're doing it to everybody else that has no idea of what's going on. Most of the defendants probably have no idea. They can't afford a good attorney. They get these public defenders, and again, all the public defenders are attempting to do are flip pleas. Even hired attorneys most of the time don't want to take it to trial. They just want to force a plea. But anyways, we'll talk about that a little bit. And again, if you're new and you have not done so, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing. Again, if you are not already subscribed, and if you are already subscribed, thank you for being a subscribed member. All right, so we're back, guys. I'm having issues with this. It's not really having issues, I guess, per se, but it just keeps getting in my way. I need to find a different placement for the mic. Is where I'm going. So I have the motion up, and this is the again, I shared with you Officer McInnes's attorney's motion, specifically also talking about how the investigator hadn't even observed the video, the body camera video from Officer McInnes until just recently. And again, Officer McInnes has been indicted for 2 years. But what I thought of, the first part of it is again, just talking about all of these reasons that nobody can have grand jury transcripts, that they're so secret. I wanted to show you. So I guess in the United States versus Procter and Gamble, the U.S. Supreme Court identified the following reasons for maintaining grand jury secrecy. So this is humorous to me. To prevent the escape of those whose indictment may be contemplated. Number 2, to ensure the utmost freedom to the grand jury in its deliberations and to prevent persons subject to indictment or their friends from being importuning the grand jurors. Again, folks, every person has the right to accuse or face their accusers. Every person has the right to see their jurors, but for some reason with the grand jury, there's all of this extra precaution. Number 3, to prevent subornation of perjury or tampering with the witness who may testify before the grand jury and later appear at the trial of those indicted by it. I mean, this stuff just doesn't even make any sense. Perjury is perjury. It's going to happen in a grand jury. It's going to happen in a real trial. Again, a real trial, you at least have transcripts. You have witnesses to what's being said. Grand jury is completely secret. Nobody knows. The prosecutor can call witnesses, but the defense can't. The defense can't be there. Nobody knows what's being said. So number 4, to encourage free on untrammeled disclosures by persons who have information with respect to the commission of crimes. And number 5, to protect innocent accused who is exonerated from disclosure of the fact that he has been under investigation and from the expense of standing trial where there was no probability of guilt. Now, that one I can actually somewhat agree. So the fifth one is talking about that just because there's a grand jury, there may not be enough evidence to indict, and that person shouldn't have to subject their innocence when there wasn't enough to indict. However, once you're already indicted, you're already put on full blast anyway, so it doesn't really matter. This is absurd. It's absurdity. I thought it was absurd when I was a police officer. It's absurd how secret the grand jury is. And there is a saying that you can indict a ham sandwich, because you can with the grand jury. Because, again, the prosecutors can do whatever they want. They can say whatever they want. It's their rodeo in there. It's a joke. It needs to be something of the past. So anyways, they're talking about all the grand jury things. But let's get down to the point where they're talking about garrity. A misconception of garrity. Now, again, garrity was I believe came originally from a New Jersey case. So yes, the garrity case came from Garrity versus New Jersey, 1967. It's involving a guy named Edward Garrity, the chief of police in Belmar, New Jersey in 1961. He and several officers were investigated for allegedly fixing traffic tickets. During questioning, they were informed that they could refuse to answer questions to avoid self-incrimination, but would face termination if they did not comply. They chose to answer out of fear of losing their jobs, and their statements were subsequently used against them in criminal prosecutions, which is exactly what's happening here. The Supreme Court ruled that the officers' statements were compelled by the state under duress, violating the 5th and 14th Amendment rights. The court emphasized that the choice between self-incrimination and job security is not a true choice at all. It's the same thing that's going on with these officers in East Cleveland. They're using these Garrity statements. The fact that this prosecution is trying to use them is a huge issue. The Supreme Court already ruled on it. So this is the section that I wanted to come to. All right, so Defendant McInenes typed a written report narrative describing his actions. The subject line was use of force and the report number. He sent the narrative to BC, who is I believe was an acting sergeant or a sergeant at that point. BC also drafted a report narrative with the subject line use of force, which was sent to Commander Mitchell. After reviewing the body camera footage, Mitchell spoke to the defendant McInenes. Commander Mitchell, stated he told defendant McInenes, I can understand how you may have made a mistake or lost your footing, but I better never see something like that again. Mitchell prepared a Form M with the subject line use of force, OCA number, which was sent to former Chief Gardner. BC, Sergeant, Mitchell, Commander, and Gardner, Chief, were not engaged in a criminal or administrative investigation at the time. How do you know? You've never asked. And again, what would be the purpose of ordering an officer to type a Form M relative to force and having it sent up the chain of command, Sergeant, Commander, Chief, if it wasn't administrative? These are the hoodwinks that this Cuyahoga County is attempting to pull on people, and it's just mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling to me that this is allowed to happen. Allowed to happen without check or anyone even questioning it. No media source is covering this. Only the tentacles of Cuyahoga County are bringing these issues up. And I plan on bringing up multiple more issues as they come to light for me. Which also reminds me of an incident that's occurring in Twinsburg right now, which I have public records request. But I fully anticipate receiving nothing from them. I will be filing on them. Apparently, they are just outright refusing anybody these records. I don't know if you've heard about the 3 officers that were terminated in Twinsburg. Let me find it. So here is my public records request that I had performed with the city of Twinsburg, reference the termination of Officer Daniel Fido, Olivia Bartolovic, and Matthew Pfeiffer. All right. And this has actually been going on for quite some time. I actually think that this is going on a year and a half ago in trial, when I was in trial. And it's still going on. Now, there's 2 sides of the story. Supposedly, the city side is that these are rogue cops that deserve their termination. But nobody seems to want to release the records of their termination or why they were terminated. And from what I understand, the officers are in the middle of a lawsuit. So I don't think that they're going to be coming out with any statements publicly. But the information that I have gathered or was able to gain from this is that they are alleging that the mayor and or police chief, I believe actually both, are in some sort of corrupt activity. And specifically, the police chief, I believe, had supposedly intervened for a family member that was supposedly arrested for DUI. Now, I don't want to get out into the specifics. I actually know a little more than I just stated, but I want to make certain that they all check out before I start throwing out names or how they were related to the chief. But supposedly the chief had some sort of direct interaction when a family member had interaction with the Twinsburg Police Department. And these officers are claiming that both the mayor and chief of police have some sort of corrupt activity. So I submitted the public records request, as you can see, asking them, for their termination letters in the internal investigation, disciplinary records, performance evaluations for the last 3 years. Talked about, email communication between chief and various people, complaints filed against the chief or the mayor in the past 5 years. Any type of records of investigation and any type of allegations referencing nepotism, record tampering, or retaliation procedures. I wanted to know the current procedures with the Twinsburg Police Department relative to sexual harassment, discrimination, and handling of those public records requests. I asked who else has requested public records from them and what the status of those determinations of release of records, because I am hearing from multiple people that are messaging me that they have just flat out denied anybody's access to these public records. And I've got nothing but time on my hands. So I'll love to file writs of mandamus against Twinsburg, violating rights for public records requests. I have no issue with that. So anyways, I did get a response from them, just basically indicated that they had received my request. And that was it. So we'll see what happens with that. So this is some information, just background relative to these officers. These officers have been working to address alleged misconduct and discrimination within the Twinsburg Police Department. They claim to have uncovered issues including sexual discrimination, sexual harassment, and potential excessive use of force by other officers. The officers took several steps to investigate address the alleged problems. They began meeting regularly to discuss departmental issues and strategies for improvement. Officer Pfeiffer initiated an investigation into an alleged out-of-policy pursuit and use of unconstitutional force by an administrative lieutenant. The officers submitted multiple requests for records and information related to these incidents. So they're talking about retaliation. The officers alleged that they faced retaliation for their efforts to expose misconduct. The department allegedly tracked and falsified reports about meetings between Officer Fido and Bartolovic. All of these officers were placed on administrative leave on March 8th, 2024, prohibiting them from entering departmental headquarters. Officers Bartolovic and Fido were subsequently terminated from their positions. So legal actions in response to the alleged retaliation, the officers have taken legal action. Officer Fido, Bartolovic, and Pfeiffer filed a lawsuit against the city of Twinsburg. The lawsuit names Thomas Mason, the police chief as a respondent. So they have a GoFundMe campaign launched on May 9th, 2024. Man, having a problem with these dates. Seeking support for officers and describing them as having courageously exposed misconduct within the Twinsburg Police Department. So that's their side, the city side, of course. So these are the Twinsburg Police Departments and city officials have responded to the allegations made by Officers Fido, Bartolovic, and Pfeiffer in several ways. Number one, administrative action. All three officers were placed on administrative leave on March 8th, 2024, and that's without a clear explanation as to why. All right, these are to cite where I'm getting this, so that's from IdeaStream and NPR. Officers Bolovic and Fido were subsequently terminated from their positions on May 1st, 2024, and that's from IdeaStream. Internal investigations. The department conducted an internal investigation led by Lieutenant Brian Donato. Again, IdeaStream. And these are all sources, essentially. Most of it is from IdeaStream. If it's something different, I'll let you know. An outside counsel, Michael Cicero, was contracted by the city to produce an independent opinion on the investigations. Disciplinary proceedings. The city provided Bartolovic and Fido with written notice of pre-disciplinary conferences on April 25th, 2024. Both officers waived their right to participate in those hearings. They used the justification for termination. The city cited several reasons for terminating. The city cited several reasons for terminating Bartolovic and Fido, including engaging in an inappropriate workplace relationship that interfered with normal work operations, excessive time spent talking during shifts and establishing a pattern of non-productive work time, improper use of a police cruiser by Fido, violations of Twinsburg policy regarding work rules and workplace harassment, and the police department's standard operating policy manual. Official statements. Twinsburg Mayor Sam Scaffide released a statement describing the officer's allegations as unsubstantiated and inflammatory concerns, end quote, and, quote, untrue, end quote. And that came from that was IdeaStream as well. Different article, though. I want to make sure that I have my notes here. I want to make sure that I'm citing where I'm getting this stuff from. Scaffide, which is the mayor, characterized the lawsuit as, quote, ill-advised distraction technique, end quote, and, quote, a smear campaign, end quote. The mayor expressed support for Police Chief Thomas Mason and the Twinsburg police leadership. So the city claims to have received approximately 140 public records requests from the plaintiffs and their counsel. Mayor Scaffide stated that the city is committed to fulfilling all valid public records requests. Well, Mayor, according to law, those public records requests should be made within 21 days unless there is something extensive and you need to communicate why you feel they're extensive and why you can't fulfill the request within 21 days. That's the law. The city has indicated it will, quote, vigorously defend, end quote, against their lawsuit. Overall, the Twinsburg Police Department and city officials have taken a defensive stance, denying the allegations and taking disciplinary action against the officers involved in the lawsuit. They maintain that the terminations were justified based on policy violations and are preparing to contest the claims made in the legal proceedings. Now, the mayor is complaining about public records requests by the plaintiffs. But so originally the mayor had, again, was complaining about the 140 public records requests by plaintiffs and their counsel. Channel 19, probably my least favorite of channels, did a story 4 days ago. And apparently the mayor was yelling and screaming to residents of Twinsburg for wanting accountability. Let's listen to this.
Well, the ongoing saga of alleged corruption and cover-ups in Twinsburg takes another turn. The mayor is now accused of threatening residents who are demanding answers. 19's Gabby Hart has been digging into this story from day one. She is the latest on the shocking development.
And when everybody's requesting these records and we start to dig into the files and dig into everything, it's amazing what you'll find there, okay? And I've got records right here that nobody in this room, okay, a few people in this room might be ashamed to let those records out.
That was Twinsburg Mayor Sam Scafidi making some bold statements during last week's city council meeting. His remarks come as tensions continue to rise in the community over allegations of corruption. Some people are demanding the release of records tied to the firing of 3 police officers. 19 News has been reporting extensively on the officers' claims of sexual harassment, a cover-up, and several botched investigations. The mayor sending this warning during that meeting.
Everybody's got something in their background, okay? That's what I found in looking for records. So they will all be released.
The latest flashpoint, these release the record signs popping up in yards throughout Twinsburg. Members of the community demanding certain documents be made public. Colleen Rubin, a Twinsburg resident for 26 years, has one of these signs in her front yard.
Pretty much you're saying that after these reports started coming out, there are a group of concerned residents in Twinsburg that decided to look into it and feel that these officers should not have been fired.
Absolutely.
And those comments the mayor made during that public meeting aren't going over well with some folks in this town.
And all I could tell you and some of the people in this room, again, be careful. If you're in a glass house, don't throw stones.
Well, the entire room took it as a threat, which you could tell just by a couple of comments from the audience.
Now, I've tried multiple times to request an on-camera interview with the mayor, but we've received only written statements. So in light of these recent comments at that city council meeting, we came down to City Hall to see if we could finally catch this mayor in person. Let's go inside and see what we can learn. Is Mayor Scafidi here right now?
I don't know. Let me see if his secretary is here.
Okay, thank you. His secretary said he was out to lunch, but he did send a statement saying in part, "My comments were not and should not be taken as a threat to residents. Records are only released in response to public records requests." He went on to say, "The reality is that this is just another example of a small group of individuals creating a controversy in a carefully calculated attempt to divert attention away from the justifiable termination of former officers." Yeah, these yard signs are a clear indication that residents in Twinsburg want transparency. They want answers. Now, it is important to note that after being contacted by our legal team, the city did start releasing some records, or at least responding. They did deny several of our requests, and they also said that elements weren't available for other parts of the request. You can head over to cleveland19.com for more information on what we received. And of course, we will stay on top of this and bring you every update as we get them. For now, I'm in Twinsburg. Gabby Hart, 19 News.
So as you can see, they even have denied Channel 19. So I'm sure that they will try to deny me the tentacles of Cuyahoga County, but I'm going to be a more powerful threat than Channel 19. Trust me on this. All right. So his statement is, again, if they were justifiable terminations, then why not just release the information? Why not, Mayor, just release the information? They may, and folks, I don't know yet. Maybe they were justifiable terminations, but again, looks sort of odd that Twinsburg won't release these records. They won't release any of the information relative to this. So let's see. I'll keep you up to date on what happens and what, if anything, that they share with me. All right, welcome back, everybody, for the final segment of the show. As I'm sure most are aware, the city of Canton did fire Mamaroff, and I wanted to share a couple things, which I thought was ironic, and then I'm going to come back for my reflection, because I know a couple of you called me out on this, thinking that I was too soft on the officer. So this is from the Canton repository, and I thought this was sort of interesting. Perry, and we're down here. Perry, who apparently is Andrea Perry. She is the director of public safety for the city of Canton. So Perry said the officer violated 4 rules and regulations regarding use of force. Detective Mamaroff, this is quote, Detective Mamaroff did not attempt to use de-escalation tactics, end quote. Perry wrote in her decision, while the scene did appear to be chaotic at times, officers are trained to utilize restraint and control. Detective Mamaroff's actions are completely outside the realm of his training and the policies of the city of Canton. While commands were being given, he did not personally provide verbal commands prior to kicking said suspect with his foot to gain compliance, end quote. She points out exactly what I did in my analysis, what I said. Maybe she's watching. I don't know. But she pointed out what I was talking about in my analysis relative to the scene being extremely chaotic. But what I find interesting is, who is she? So I looked her up. Apparently, she's been the public safety director of Canton since September of 2013. Prior to that, she was the director of compliance, whatever that is. Prior to that, she was the director of personnel. Her education, she has an MBA, Master of Business Administration. She has a bachelor's degree in business administration. She has no public safety training whatsoever. It's amazing. I love these cities that just arbitrarily award these assignments to people. She has no public safety training or education whatsoever. Never been a cop, but she's going to sit here and give comments about what police should be doing. So again, a couple of you called me out. You thought that I was too soft on him. It was a hard call. I think I said it in my analysis. I personally would not have used that type of force. He used it. I guess my point of going through the analysis, it was several points or several reasons that I did. One, I am attempting to bridge that gap between police and citizens. And I was called out by the anti-police establishment for not talking about it. So I wanted to bring it up and talk about it, but I wanted to do an actual analysis and actually an objective analysis on what happened. And I feel that I did. My major point in showing that was that the media only wanted you to see one little slice, one little nugget of what happened, and did not give you the totality of the circumstances or the totality of the chaotic nature of that entire scene was not displayed by the media, nor was it ever even talked about. So I thought at least it was interesting that Miss Perry, with no education in public safety, who holds the public safety spot there in Canton, Ohio, that even she at least acknowledged that a scene was pretty chaotic. So anyways, again, with that, we have a lot of things going on. I forgot to mention there was also somewhat of a suspicious death in Medina that a viewer had asked me to look into. It actually involves a situation and I say Medina, it's Medina County. There's a situation that I don't want to comment a lot on until I get the report, but it does initially appear to be sort of odd. So we're going to look at that also. I completely forgot about that until I was just talking with the public records people over in Medina County yesterday. So, with that, we're going to cut this short. Again, it's my birthday this week. Got a lot of things planned for that. A lot of things attempting to be planned for the next channel. So thanks for sticking around. Again, if you aren't subscribed, please do so. And we'll see you next week.